portion of the video, we're going to talk about principal views. So, hopefully, you're already familiar with the idea of multi views and understanding that when you're sketching, your idea can really come to life through simple sketches. But thinking of the different types of plane, the front plane, the profile, and the horizontal plane, will allow you to really have these, allow to be able to see the whole um, design from all the different views needed to build to be able to understand the project. But continuing with this idea of view, there's some principal views. There's some views that are sort of guiding everything. In this case, we're going to touch on three, which is plan, elevation, and a section. So the first one is a plan. In this case, this is sort of the what we call a top view, but it's representing various horizontal projections of a building site. So I want you to imagine that there's a house, right? And you cut around 3 to 4 feet and you remove everything else, right? It's like those toy houses that sometimes you can pick up and remove, right? But you just leave what's on the floor and anything else it's up to 3 to 4 feet. But everything else, all the walls, all the roofs, everything else is removed. And now if you're seeing from above, you get to see something like this. So you still get to see some walls, not all the way to the top, but you get to see up to a certain point. But most importantly, you get to see the layout, the way the this in this case a house is designed, where the restrooms are located with the rooms, where the different how the circulation, the different types of stairs, right? We need to see the overall dimensions. How long is this house? This by this. We need to see major points of access. There's a door right here. There's another door. We get to see all these different types of organization, layout, space, and even we start getting to understand a little bit of the materials. The elevation is very similar to the idea of this frontal or um, profile view, and this is sometimes called, front, side, or rear view. Uh, Sometimes it's also called like north, east, south, west, uh, depending on the specific coordinates or location that they are. So these views, they sort of imagine going back to the same house that we were talking about previously. We talked about removing the walls and the roof so we can see from above, but now we don't remove anything. We just go to the front of the house. Imagine you're getting your mail from your house. What do you see from the outside? And that's what becomes sort of your front elevation. But going back to horizontal plane and the profile plane, these are in two-dimensional views. So you can see here this elevation of the same plan, right? We can see this plan from how it is on the floor, how it sits on the ground. But now we get to see how it looks from the outside, right? In this case, we get to see how there's a door here, some steps that leads to the door, there's some sort of openings and so on, right? We can see the overall height of the building. Here we can know in the plan we knew the organization, we knew how many rooms, the overall length and width, but we don't know how tall this is. We don't know how many floors. We don't know what materials happen outside. And that's where elevations start to come in. A section is, imagine the same building that we talked about, the same house. You remove the roof, you see the plan. You stand outside, you see the elevations. But what happens what's within the actual house? So if you cut the house in the middle, imagine you're cutting a cake right in the middle, that will give you a section. And this, what it does, it allows you to see what's not only happening from the outside or an organization, but what's happening within the building itself. We get to see a lot more of the structure. We get to see how the buildings, how the rooms sort of respond to one another, or what's sitting on top of each other, one another, and so we get a lot more information. So the same building here that we can see, there's this sort of level that from the outside we can only see, but when we cut, we understand that it goes to a sub-level, right? There's structure and some sort of foundation and some sort of room even that goes beyond what we can see from outside, right? So now we get to see a little bit more. We get to see a little bit more of the materials. We get to see where things are placed and things that we couldn't see as when you're standing outside. So sometimes I like to think of elevations as a picture and sections as x-ray vision, right? As an x-ray when you go get an x-ray at the doctor. So arranging views, again, remember how all of these are sort of connected into the same building, right? Into the same design. So we talked about already about plans, and plans, as I mentioned, they're cut usually about 4 feet, and they focus on function, form, interior, or the exterior space. So this is sort of what I was talking about, this idea of exploding or removing everything else just to leave the layout and the actual floor plan of this building. So this is another floor plan, an example that we can see, and you can see that this example, what it's talking about is the different types of line weights. So now there's this whole language to express and to talk about, to convey what are these types of lines, what is this floor plan really doing. So it's important that as you know, other videos we'll talk more about this. What are some of the lines meaning? What are the different symbols? But in this case, like, these are doors, right? And so why are they drawn that way? These are stairs, but what is this line doing? So the floor plan becomes a little bit more complex as you start to really provide information as to what each of these symbols means. And it could get very, very detailed, such as something like this, or it can get a little bit more visual, such as something like this. If you're watching this video, which of these two do you like better? Most likely you answered this one. It's a lot easier to see. You kind of know where your rooms are. But again, this is the one that you really will use when it comes to building it. This has not a lot of information or not information needed to build, but this one will actually help you build it. Poche has to do with the idea of when you're cutting buildings. So going back to the idea of sections, it's this idea of that allows you to see things easier and clear, right? So sometimes when to darkening or cut walls to say that they're solid, and allows us to have a clear view of the spaces. You can see it here and here. These are some of the symbols that I talked about previously, and such as in floor plans. And again, we'll go over this in other topics. Or you can simply search for architectural symbols, and there's a whole list that you can sort of start to look into. Side plans goes back to the very similar of a floor plan, but this one goes even further. This one goes as if nothing is cut, you're just viewing from a bird's eye view. You're seeing the land as if you were flying a drone in a way, but again, in a two-dimensional plane. A side plan describes the location and the orientation of a building and its relation to the land, right? So this is where I'm building, but there's some vegetation here, there's a pond here, there's a lake, there's some walkways, there's all of this is fenced up, there's some vegetation, all of that, but it goes back to the idea of this sort of type of floor plan, which is 2D view from above, but now we're cutting at a different plane. You get to see how some of these expand and relate to the land itself, right? So this becomes this, and eventually becomes this house, right? Which is a very interesting house. So elevation, as I mentioned before, is like viewing from the front, from the sides, and it's this vertical plane view. In this case, all you will simply do is take your object or design and bring it down, bringing some lines. So we're looking at it as in the plan view, in this case, sort of the floor plan, and we're bringing down all these lines, and then you start bringing these up. It's important that you think about it, that it's related to the other plans or the floor plans, because they need to be the same scale. So something like this eventually happens. Building, it's just this horizontal view of the image of a building projected orthographically. So you can see it looks like this, which looks like this, looks like this. This one would be this sign, right? And as I mentioned, this multi-view, you have your west, your east, your south, depending on where yours is located, and so you start placing them that way. And again, you can have something very complex such as this that has all the dimensions, all the different information, or you can something prettier that looks like this. Again, which one do you like better? I'm guessing you like this one perhaps more, but this one's the one that actually becomes a construction document that will provide the information needed to be built. Section is like cutting through something, and you can see the same example we were using before. Here we saw earlier this elevation from the sides and the front, but what happens within the building, right? This is sort of what we get to see through a section, and here we see another detail of how this window is really being designed and built into this house. And so these are going to be represented through cuts. You'll see that you have this symbol of a section cut, and the way the way this arrow is pointing, that's the direction where you're cutting. So in this case, you're standing from here, and you're going to see everything over there. In this case, you're going to see this. So in this case, we see this section represented here, and then this section represented there. You can see the same heights because they should all be related, and so we have this longitudinal section, and then we have this cross section. Interior elevations will end with this. It has to do with the idea of same idea as if you were outside looking at this building, but now you're inside. What do you see when you stand here? In this case, you see this fireplace. What happens if you see to this side? You see this doors and just this wall. What happens here? You see this little nook, right? What happens to D? You see this window, right? And so you get to really see these things, and again, all of this is needed for when you're building, so that every room can be properly designed. Hopefully this video was helpful. Thank you for watching this section regarding drawings, multi-view drawing, sketching, and different types of drawing. Thank you for watching.